Okay, I guess I'll open this. We are here for the Tillamook County Solid Waste Service District Budget Committee meeting, June 2nd, 2026. And we need to start this. We are short. We have a quorum. And, oh, well, that's a really good idea. I will second that.
If I decline.
you- Is that okay, Ken? Okay, I have a motion in a second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ken. You now have the gavel if you want it symbolically or physically.
I don't need it symbolically or physically, but thank you very much, Commissioner. I'll turn it over to Mr. Weiss for the budget summary of solid waste department.
Can I clear something up first?
Of course.
Can I say it both ways? Because I don't know. Is it Weiss or Weiss?
It's gone both ways, and growing up, we heard one from the family on this side, and
Okay.
we've gone with the Weiss most of my growing up, but I do Weiss as part of the mix, and German origin, so Weiss is probably the correct pronunciation, but
But you're not offended if I get, can I go, I know that I do it both ways and I don't know.
yeah,
if
it's gone
bugging
both
you.
ways from a lot of people. No, I don't get offended.
Perfect.
Weiss,
Thank you for
Weiss.
answering that. I would just been bugging me and I would want to ask you.
No, I cleared it up, when I first started a couple times, but then it goes back and forth, and I'm not offended, so thank you. Thank you for that, Paul. Deborah, did you mention that you needed to read the description into the record? Should we start there, or do you want me to dive into the?
Up to you. We can start with the budget detail or the budget message.
I think this is high
Oh,
level, and then we can
yeah.
get into more detail. That sounds good to me.
Okay. What hasn't been done in prior years is a true budget message for the solid waste service district. That is an ORS requirement. So I'm going to read through a quick budget message.
Great.
Presented to the Budget Committee of the Tillamook County Solid Waste Service District, budget hearing and adoption scheduled on June 17th, 2026 at 9:35 a.m. Members of the Budget Committee, I am pleased to present the proposed budget for the Tillamook County Solid Waste Service District for the year of July 1, 2026 through June 30, 2027. This message explains the budget, the district's financial policies, the important features of the budget, and the main changes from last year as required by Oregon local budget law. The district pays for itself through fees customers pay to use its facilities. It operates the county's transfer stations, handles household hazardous waste. That is a mouthful. Sorry. Supports recycling and code enforcement, monitors a closed landfill, and sets aside money for future equipment and long-term care of that landfill. The budget is organized into 3 separate funds, each with its own job. Fund 410 is the Solid Waste Service District Operating Fund, the day-to-day operating budget, covering administration, the transfer stations, the closed landfill, and the household recycling and hazardous waste collection program. Almost all of the district's income is received here. Fund 420 is the Solid Waste Sinking Fund, which builds up resources to invest in major improvements. Fund 430 is the Solid Waste Post-Closure Reserve, savings set aside for the long-term liabilities of the district's closed landfill, as required by landfill closure and post-closure rules. Together, the 3 funds total about $8.8 million in resources, $8.7 million after removing the $100,000 transfer that moves between 2 of the funds. A fund-by-fund summary appears in the table at the end of the message. Budget highlights and significant changes. The operating fund, Fund 410, total resources are budgeted at $4,915,000. We're on $4,260,000 in expected income plus $655,000 on hand at the start of the year. Income is about 7% higher than last year, driven mainly by disposal fees, which rise from $3.5 million to $3.7 million. Budgeted spending of $4,412,637 runs about $153,000 ahead of current year income, with the difference covered by beginning fund balance. Even so, the budget strengthens reserves. The contingency rises to $150,000 and the ending balance to $352,363 for total reserves of $502,363, up from $371,837 last year. The main cost increases are personnel, up $47,000, chiefly health insurance, and materials and services up 149,000, chiefly the transfer station disposal contract. Staffing is unchanged at 6.5 positions. Sinking fund, Fund 420. This fund continues to two major project line items budgeted. One at the Manzanita Transfer Station of 746,000 and one at the Pacific City Transfer Station of 1.7 million. Budgeted mainly through a 2.5 million loan. Resources are 687,500 lower than last year, almost entirely because of a 690,000 in state grant funding budgeted last year that is not expected to recur in the 2026-2027. Post-closure reserve, Fund 430. This fund has no budgeted income or spending. It holds $1,090,864 in savings to ensure money is available for the long-term liabilities of the closed landfill, and keeping it whole supports the district's overall financial strength. No major changes in financial policy are proposed for 26-27. The district continues to operate as a self-supporting fee-based service. Basis of accounting. The budget is prepared on the cash basis of accounting, the same basis the district has used in prior years. No change in the basis of accounting is proposed for the coming year. In conclusion, this budget keeps the district self-supporting, holds service levels and staffing steady, advances the Manzanita and Pacific City transfer station projects, and protects the district's reserves and its long-term landfill savings. The public budget hearing and adoption are scheduled for June 17th, 2026 at 9:35 a.m. When the budget is expected to be approved and adopted and appropriations made before the new budget year begins on July 1, 2026. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. And you can speak to this more than I can, but, I ran down her office today to get some clarification on this, even though it's my second time doing this, but it wasn't as clear as this. And she answered my question quickly, but then this is amazing to have this for a new commissioner coming in, or if there was a new budget committee member coming in, not understanding how your department is run, basically, because it's under Public Works, but it's a separate district. It's really fascinating. This is really helpful for me. And I like that the public can look at this too to get those answers. I don't know if
I
it's
agree,
been like this.
absolutely. No, we haven't had a budget message for solid waste, and I agree, absolutely. It's very helpful. It's really nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, much appreciated, Deborah. That was kind of a great overarching picture of where we're at, where we're going, and a good breakdown for all the different funds we have. So yeah, at this point, if there's no questions of Deborah's, I'll jump into the fund specifically, talk some of the bigger changes. Did provide copies to everyone present with the highlighted numbers, which are kind of the focus, the main changes, additions, reductions, things we'll want to just talk about for the new proposed fiscal year 26-27 budgets. So we'll start with the 410 fund, and up at the top here, we're starting with revenue. And so I did want to point out for 24-25 actuals, that number is artificially low. We've talked about this at our SWAC meetings a few times. During that fiscal year transition, Avro Recycling did not deposit their monthly deposits for at least 3 or 4 months. So Sean was surprised when our bank account was getting really low. And at that point, I didn't really have access to the daily fund balance. So I was a little bit in the dark on that. But so there was a big influx of deposits from the Tillamook transfer station that came in July or August. And so that was on the next fiscal year. Perhaps at some point we could have gone back and adjusted it, but I think at this point it's probably too late. But I just wanted to clarify that the actuals, beginning balance there wasn't 167,000. It's about $150,000 more. So it puts us just over 500,000, kind of consistent with the 23-24 actuals. So I wanted to clarify that just for a clear picture of the past couple year fiscal year actuals. That didn't stand out. So looking at the proposed 26-27 budget, we are proposing a beginning balance of 655,000. We are seeing consistent disposal at the Tillamook transfer station in terms of tonnages in, tonnages out. That's our main revenue source, as Deborah highlighted. Garbage in, garbage out, unfortunately, is the moneymaker for us. Recycling is not quite yet the financial golden child we like to see in producing revenue, but it is growing. So that beginning balance, we're seeing a little bit higher revenues at Manzanita and Pacific City, where we have our minimums that allow us to recoup a little bit more funds from the public for smaller loads, as well as just being fiscally responsible. This is my third budget cycle, and we had some concerns that 24-25 year, I believe, was getting low, and there was some confusion about the fund balances. And so, as I've been getting into my job over the last 3 years, just being fiscally responsible and not buying new vehicles or things we don't need. And so trying to build up that beginning balance and making sure we're financially solvent moving forward. So we've had a good year in terms of solid waste fees. That's kind of the, moving further down, the next highlighted number, 3.7 million in solid waste fees we're projecting. We budgeted 3.5 less last year. As I said, we're seeing a slight uptrend in solid waste fees, so we're anticipating a little bit more revenue there, which also on the flip side, we'll talk about in expenditures. More garbage in does increase our expenses for hauling to the Coffin Butte landfill. So that's really our big money in, money out account number 4362 there.
It's a miscellaneous revenue.
Right below it there, the 50,000. Yeah, so that is, I've shaken things up a little bit. That's typically been recycling revenue for cardboard, metals, things of that nature. Moving forward, now that 50 grand is available from the Recycling Modernization Act. So that 50 grand is based on per capita for unincorporated population for Tillamook County. That comes out to roughly about 50,000. It is earmarked for certain education and outreach purposes. So, but we can do some upgrades at the transfer station, signs, reader boards. So we're going to be spending some money moving into the new fiscal year on those items. That's the 50 grand there from miscellaneous revenue. So that's just the RMA. Down below from the transfer stations, this one is the 95,000. As you can see, it was 80 grand last year, a significant increase from some of the actuals in past years. That 95 grand is a combination of can and bottle returns. So we work with TEP to kind of funnel the money through them. They take an administrative fee that helps support their efforts at the Tillamook Estuaries Partnership, and they share those funds with us. So all the can and bottle redemptions that people turn in Manzanita and Pacific City gets put into that fund for education and outreach purposes. So that's typically about 40 grand of that. We're also looking now, I've moved the recycling revenue. So cardboard is really the only recycling commodity that's and scrap metal that are consistently valuable on the market. Plastics and paper are quite volatile and not money makers. So that's included there. And then there's also a little bit of additional RMA money. We're getting reimbursed for collection of glass at the transfer station based on tonnage. So they give you about $77 per ton for that. So the RMA law, it's still rolling out. We are accepting new materials in all 3 transfer stations, and we've been promoting that. That is tied up in a legal battle right now with the manufacturers of suing the state, and there should be a decision in July, and so we'll get more clarity. But I haven't heard any concerns that the law won't move forward. So we're anticipating that funding coming through in the next fiscal year. So that puts our total revenue projected for fiscal year 26-27 at just over 4.9 million, $4,915,000. Any questions on the big revenue picture? Now we'll jump into expenses. So the first one there is administrative expenses, Department 41001. A lot of these numbers are populated by the treasurer, but there is, you can see a slight increase in total personal services. And that's just a fixed number that was shared by Deborah, I believe, and that's incorporating all the health, life insurance, retirement, all those good things. And as Deborah mentioned in our briefing, 6.5 is the anticipated staffing for the next fiscal year. And that halftime is code enforcement. We're still budgeting for a potential part-time code enforcement. We also have a line item for some additional funds, and we've been working on the task force with Commissioner Fournier and the sheriff. And so we are kind of sharing costs a little bit more, but I just want to leave the funds now until we figure out Fund 123 is it, and how that's all going to work. So we're just holding steady on the code enforcement budget till we figure out more of the details moving forward. So yeah, we can turn over to the next page of the budget here. Total materials and services for admin, pretty consistent, $151,057 projected for the new fiscal budget, which is in line with many of our previous years. Transfers out, again, $100,000 we've been doing for the last couple of years. That goes into the sinking fund, which is being used to fund our capital improvements at the Manzanita and Pacific City transfer stations. So we're going to continue that transfer to pay off our loan moving forward, which is 50% forgivable. And we are just about to activate our loan for Manzanita. So we're going to be getting into that process and see how it all works here in the next fiscal year. So that puts our projected fiscal year budget unappropriated ending fund balance at $352,363. And again, overall administrative expenditures fairly consistent from what we've seen in past years. So if there are any questions on the admin category, I'll move into transfer station expenses. So this is, as Deborah mentioned, our biggest revenue source, I guess you could say, as well as expenditure category. So transfer station expenses, contracted services, $3 million. That's predominantly the contract with Dungey Avon Recycling for hauling materials to the Coffin Butte landfill. Also in that number is Recology's contract for hauling from Manzanita to Tillamook. And then we also have the dairy compost contract, which supports our yard program, which is ongoing now. And that gets hauled off to dairy compost and processed to become compost. So we are projecting with Averill contracting, their annual increase is set to see 80% of CPI. So we're going to see a $2 increase in the cost for hauling of garbage to Corvallis. So that typically reflects in our fee increase, and we try to match, the expenditures with the revenue solid waste fees and the contracted services for Averill Recycling. So that's the biggest line item in transfer station expenses. Everything else, buildings and grounds, equipment has been fairly steady. So total expenditures for materials and services, $3,174,500,000. Slowly creeping up as we've seen with cost of everything going up, but fairly in line with our expenditures for materials and services in past years. And then below that, we have the operating contingency. This is something my supervisor, Chris Leite, wanted to work into the budget here last year. It wasn't something my predecessor had done, having the contingency in there based on looking at the past budgets. So we've kind of been building that in, 150,000. It helps us get that fiscal year transition where there's kind of a delay in processing and making sure we've got money to cover the big Averill payment that comes around beginning of the new fiscal year. So total expenses for the new proposed budget, $3,324,500. And we are, as you mentioned, you can see 545,000 revenue minus expenses, slowly keeping up, keeping reserves high, watching expenditures, and we're seeing a little bit more garbage in, so that's accounting for that increase there. Moving into the next department, closed landfill expenses, 41003. This is one of our smaller budget items, but we are going to see some shifts in the fiscal year budget proposed here. We've got monitoring dropping from 50 to 25,000. We did have a 2-2 compliance issue at the transfer station Tillamook. I'm not sure if commissioners you've heard about the E. coli issue. The source is quite elusive. We've been digging it. I just had the septic system torn apart in camera, and we still can't identify the source of that. So because of the continuing high E. coli levels, DEQ wanted us to put in some engineering control, a new swale. We need to propose it. So we have a new swale plan for construction here over the summer. It's going to be up by the scale there in Tillamook. So hopefully we're finding higher concentrations of E. coli in that area. So we're thinking it was coming from the septic system. Again, we couldn't locate it there, but we're going to redo that swale. Hopefully we can catch the E. coli there before it gets down to the sample points and moves towards going off site. But that's been a long-standing issue. We're continuing to work on it, but that reduction in the budget there from 50 to 25,000 is we no longer are contracting with Parametrics Stormwater Company to do the engineering work with DEQ. That's been completed. Now we're looking to move into the construction phase, so we don't have to have that contract in place. So we'll be not spending as much on monitoring services, but result of that, buildings and grounds, we've got a $50,000 increase. And that's the projected construction of the bioswale and the new kind of a new channel along each side of the road as well there in Tillamook. So I didn't have an exact engineer's estimate, but Parametric said it's probably going to be 35 to 65 grand. So we put 50,000 in there. I'm hoping to have some money in the 420 from the sinking fund available for this, but we did put it in the 410 budget here. So we will doing some construction there. So you can see a market increase for the fiscal year here, just $101,250 for the closed landfill expenses. But really hoping to get this E. coli issue under control. And, if we can get to a point where we can clean out the E. coli and we could discharge the leachate, we could really save even more money in this budget category. So we're working towards that.
When they're testing for E. coli, can you tell if it's a human source or an animal source?
That's a great question, Commissioner. I imagine the smart scientists who've been working on this would have looked into that, but I don't know the answer to that. But yeah, there's a new theory. Yeah, they were looking at animals. We just can't figure it out. But yeah, I will ask Parametrics when I talk with them next if we could figure out if there's a source or identifier. Yeah. Okay, any other questions on closed landfill? Okay. The last budget category in the 410 fund is Department 41004. It's RHC, it's recycling, hazardous waste, and code enforcement. Some changes I just want to mark, as we discussed a little bit earlier, we still have the $15,000 earmarked there for code enforcement efforts, and that'll fund some of our new wave and cat forms with the sheriff and paying for delivery of violations and the new compliance officer. So that's been left in there, as I mentioned, just to figure out how this new code enforcement task force and systems all going to unravel. So we're leaving that in there. The hazardous waste program is the biggest expense for this budget category, 120,000. We did cut back on events last calendar year. We typically be doing 9 for as long as I've been with the county. We cut it back to 6. We did every other month. Got a little hectic during the summer. Some complaints, long lines. People needed to use the restroom and they're running out of gas in line. So I want to make this convenient. It is quite popular. And for a rural county, we offer a lot of this service that other counties do not. And it's quite popular. So I appreciate people's willingness to turn out and do the right thing and dispose of it with us at the hazardous waste event. But with this expense item, there's no real revenue to back it. Like, with garbage, you've got the tipping fees to cover. So that's really subsidized by the transfer station or the solid waste fees. So we've been, the number's been dialed in. We're hitting just about 120 grand this year, which is a little increase actually. Unfortunately, we had a couple events, depending on barrels and seeing just some big bills that I wasn't expecting. So that one's always a little tricky, but we're holding steady. We should come in just on budget this year, hopefully next year. And if we can do some cost savings, I did introduce one more event during the summer just to alleviate some of those long lines. So now we have June, July, August, 3 in a row to hopefully alleviate that lines during the summer.
Can we find a way to charge for household hazardous waste to at least make it break even?
Yeah, I've worked with a couple different counties and cities. I haven't seen anybody charging. We typically charge businesses, which we do. We get 3 to 4 businesses for the 3 or 4 events. So that's a little bit of a revenue generator. Yeah, I don't know, Ken. That's a great idea. It's popular. We are offering it free of charge. It's quite expensive. So I haven't seen that model, but there's some forums out there, some conference coming up later in June, and yeah, Paul, you're making a face there.
Making a face because I was thinking that too, but then I thought people won't. The whole idea is to get them to clean out the paint out of their garage. That otherwise they'll just sneak into the regular garbage, or they'll. I just feel like the lithium batteries, which are a pain that everybody has now, and I think that's probably why. I was thinking the same thing. What a great program! Can we make money off it in my head? But then I'm concerned about that part of it, where it's like the yard debris thing works really good. I'm motivated to clean, put a barrier around my house, like I did all the stuff near my house, because I'm like, I can just take it to the dump. So I don't know. It's a good question.
The challenge that I have, and I like the idea of having it for free. Anything we can offer the community,
Sure.
we're not charging for, is a good thing in my opinion. But it does cost. It's an expensive proposition, and I believe what I heard is there's challenges for reducing the number of events that we have, longer lines, people running out of gas, people needing to use the restroom. What's the, what's the right trade-off there? We just can't have endless events at our expense.
Right.
So is there a trade-off there? There's a question worth asking.
Good conversation we should bring up and talk more about at the SWAC meetings.
Yeah, yeah, always a fun topic. We always go back and forth on that one, and there's just no magic
Bring it
answer
up
there.
again.
But yeah, we'll keep.
I have some ideas. I don't want to say it here.
You probably count vehicles at events, right?
We do. We have a little intake form that people fill out, and then we count those after the event, so we get a number. Yeah.
Because it seems like most people would not object to a nominal fee, $10 per car or something like that. I don't know if that would be enough to make a difference, but I don't think it would be enough to stop them from coming.
Right, that's the key.
Yeah.
That sweet spot.
Or it might, maybe they go twice a year instead of 4 times a year. So it cuts down on the congestion.
On traffic.
Ah.
Yeah.
Maybe we give them a free block of cheese. We get something donated,
There you go.
pay the $10 and you get a block of cheese.
Okay. I think people, be on board.
This is gonna, we'll invite you to the SWAC meeting and we have it.
All right.
Talk about cheese. Yeah. Okay. Well, no, I appreciate all your thoughts, and yeah, that's a tricky one. We're went to 6. We're adding 1 back in. At least it's been consistent though. But like I said, I did have 2 invoices that were typically 15 to 20 grand per event, and 2 of them came in around 25. And so some bigger drums with certain materials, and there's just hazardous waste is expensive. So, there's online systems doing appointments and telling people they can only bring 125 gallons is something I've seen in other places, reducing what they can bring in. But they're so used to the way it's been run that they're just kind of with the blinders on to a degree. So we're going to keep rolling, but I appreciate all input and thoughts on how we can improve that program. Recycling promotion there, we did have an increase, moving back to the budget, RHC. Recycling promotion, 25 grand. We talked last year about contracting with Heart of Cardam to do education and outreach. At that point, the treasurer said, if you go over 29 grand, probably best to hire someone part-time. If you keep it under, maybe do a direct to contract with someone who could execute the work and reduce any overhead on that. So Heart of Cardam has worked with the Master Recyclers Program and have a good working relationship. So we did budget 25 grand to potentially do an education outreach contract. I did just get word a few weeks ago that they secured a $75,000 grant from DEQ. Ours actually at our last SWAC meeting, I believe, but they have a new budget for basically being kind of the education and outreach arm and helping with those efforts in Tillamook County. So that was left in here because it's still being worked out, but I'm hopeful that Heart of Cardam will be able to execute a lot of the Master Recyclers course, some more education and outreach with the DEQ grant. So that is exciting news and may result in some cost savings here, as you may not have to execute that line item until it's proposed $50,000. And then lastly, no charge disposal, $4 grand. I've been getting more, I don't know if it's because we're doing more code enforcement things on Facebook, but people reaching out for no fee disposal letters, a little bit more beach cleanups than I've seen. And the Stucco Valley did a little cleanup. So we did go over the 2000 budget from last year. So I upped that to $4 grand for some code enforcement as we're making some good progress and just want to continue to support those efforts. So overall expenses in the budget category, 192,250, a bit of an increase. That's mostly from the potential recycling promotion contract with Heart of Cardam for education and outreach. So any questions on any of the expenses? We'll just do a quick review of revenue and expense summary here. So overall, potential resources for fiscal year 26-27 for the Solid Waste Service District, $4,915,000. Total expenditures for the proposed fiscal year 26-27 budget, $4,412,637. And then reserves, we have the $150,000 contingency, as well as the unappropriated ending fund balance there, with a total reserve of just over $500,000, $502,363. So that is all for the 410 fund. Happy to answer any questions if you do have any. All right, we can move into the 420 fund. As Deborah mentioned, this is the solid waste sinking fund, builds up resources to invest in major improvements. So as you can see for the proposed fiscal year 27, we have that blank highlighted box. That's the state grants. That 690,000 has been predominantly spent at this point. We do have around 100 grants still left on the grant allocated for Pacific City Transfer Station. So that call for bid process is in the works, and we're hoping to purchase the new building right away. We do have a June 30th deadline for expenditures and then 2 months to submit for reimbursement. So we've hit some roadblocks, and we were hoping this wouldn't come up to the deadline, but I'm fairly confident we can work with the contractor and make the big purchase and get reimbursed that 100 grand, and that will close out all of our overflow stormwater grants, as they're called. It's been a big help. It's kept the engineering moving forward. It's paid for most of the Manzanita project. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we move down into the capital outlay category. But the loan proceeds, as I mentioned, we haven't activated any of the loans at this point. We are working now to procure some of the loan for Manzanita to finish out that project up there. But the total loan amount is $2,520,000 from the DEQ State Revolving Fund loan, which are 50% forgivable, and are stormwater focused. So we're very grateful for
You
DEQ.
say 15 or 50?
50.
Okay, great.
And I think the interest rate,
Well, that's a good loan.
yeah, I know. I
Good
think
loan.
the interest rate's in the 2 to 3%. So yeah, not a bad deal. And we're very grateful to have those. In the materials and service expense category, we've got a decrease from 300 grand last year to 100 grand for consulting. We're in our final contract with Great West Engineering, who's been doing a lot of the design work for Manzanita Pacific City. We have our final agreement with them. It should bring Pacific City across the finish line with construction. And then for the foreseeable future, there's been talk of doing some upgrades in Tillamook, doing a new road, things of that nature. So we'll look into that moving forward, but we just want to kind of get Manzanita and Pacific City projects completed. So that'll be our final consulting contract. You can see principal payments, interest, those were calculated. I know Sean and Chris worked together to look at the loan agreements and what it would all look like. And those are the principal and interest payments projected for the loan once those are initiated. In the capital outlet category, you have transfer station capital projects, MTS, which is Manzanita Transfer Station, $746,150. So that is the loan amount that's been awarded to us to cover the construction of the Manzanita Transfer Station. The winning bidder for that project came in at just under 400,000. It's been a couple change orders, but it's at about $430,000 for the project at this point. So, and that's without even activating the $700,000 for the loan. So we do have some funds available. Working with Chris and the paving crew, we're going to be paving the entrance road up to the transfer station there, which has been rough for a couple of years. They did some gravel on the sides. It's kind of washed out at this point. So we're going to have that road paved. The city of Manzanita also has some stipulations from their planning commission. The ring road needs to be expanded a little bit. They want to make sure there's a safe fire turnaround by the gate there. So we're going to pave that, as well as a new fence is being required by the Manzanita Planning Commission. So there's some more work to do in Manzanita. But as I mentioned, once we activate the loan, we've pretty much paid for the project this far with the grant money. So we have plenty of money, and DEQ did tell me a lot of places will just sit on these loans for 5-10 years. And if something comes up, you can tip into that pot and use the money for a new roof. It does have to be framed within a stormwater, purpose, I guess you could say. So that's going to be used for specific things, but it'll pay for the road. The gate, she said, will be probably likely cleared. So we've got some funds there to continue meeting the needs of the public, as well as what the city would like to see for the Manzanita Transfer Station. So that was positive, a surplus of money. On the other side, with the transfer station capital projects, Pacific City Transfer Station, $1,741,850. That one, we just received bids last week, or May 19th, and the lowest bidder came in at 2.1 million. So well above that number. And these loans were from a few years back. These have gotten more expensive. The engineer's estimate was still about 1.7, 1.8. So 2.1, surprisingly enough, though, my DEQ contact has continued to ask me if we would like more money for our loans. And so I think we're going to ask. And I asked, since we're way under budget, not under budget, but we haven't accessed the funds in Manzanita, could we switch them to Pacific City?
Right.
No, it's very tightly allocated to what you applied for. So that would have been great, but it seems like the fund has some availability. Yeah, that's a big jump. We're looking at $400,000 between what's currently allocated. So I reached out to see if 2.1 can be accommodated. And she's looking into it. We're pretty hopeful. So I think we'll be okay there. So that overall, those are the big expenditures. Again, not much in terms of revenue, but we do, I'm sorry, that's not misspoken, but there's stagnant funds there. The loan, we're transferring $100,000 in, and this has been a great fund to help move these projects forward. So any questions on the 420 sinking fund?
The Pacific City Transfer Station, the 1.74 million. Is there part of that project we could complete if we don't get the additional money from DEQ? Could we start or finish parts of that project?
I think that could be a possibility. The call for bid, it's detailed the entire project, and someone bid based on executing that work. I don't know how that would shake out, with the legal team, and if you did have a financial hardship and you just stop work, how could the contractor sue you, or what would that look like? Yeah, I don't know at this point, Ken, how we could enact that. I think if maybe we were a little bit more proactive, but we didn't know where the bids were going to land, so it's tough to say. But that's an interesting idea.
I'm wondering if we couldn't go back to the contractors and just say, listen, our budget for this is 1.74.
Yeah.
Can you meet that?
Yeah, if DEQ comes back and say, we can't increase the loan amount, I think that's a conversation we'll have to have. Yeah, it's a reality of it. Because, the 100 grand we put into the sinking fund could be directed towards the project. Maybe we could scrounge up a little bit, but 400,000 would be tough for the budget to accommodate.
And if we had the money, when would that project begin?
Pacific City?
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah, so we just took bids in on May 19th. The two low bidders were very close, and so we're working through with Mr. Leibel and County Council which bid we're going to be moving forward. So that slowed down the process. As I mentioned, we were hoping to expend that remaining $100,000 in the grant by the end of June. And then we had put in a 150-day completion from start of work. We were hoping to get it done before the rains really kicked in, because they're going to pull all the asphalt, repave everything. And we're worried that if we get into the wet season and there's no asphalt down, it's a very steep slope up there, muddy, messy, and not safe for operation. So we were hoping to get done by end of year, but now with a little bit of a delay and getting the contractor ready. But yeah, we're hoping to get this going, finished within the next year. Thank you. All right. Any questions on the 425? Yeah. And lastly, at 430, this is the solid waste post-closure reserve for the landfill. So this was determined with the state that the closed landfill needed to have a certain amount of funds to cover any catastrophic failure, or a 10-year. I believe it's a 10-year. Yeah, if we had no money, this $1 million would cover our expenses for 10 years for the monitoring, the leachate pumps, and things of that nature. Based on previous expenditures in the closed landfill 410 category, we could potentially reduce the amount in this reserve. So I've contracted with our stormwater consultant. Because of the E. coli issue, we really could put some money into a new filtration system. We talked about the worms in the past, having someone come out and do the worms for mitigation of the leachate and working on that E. coli. So they're looking into, based on what we spent over the last 10 years on the closed landfill, what our liabilities are, could we extract, they're thinking maybe $300,000 to $400,000 from this $1 million to put into the landfill for the E. coli issue, redoing the swales, and just getting the infrastructure for stormwater on site a little bit more shored up. So we haven't gotten a final verdict on whether we will or will not be able to, but that money's been sitting there unchanged for many years. I've talked to my predecessor a little bit about it, and he thought no, it's worth a shot. If you can get a little bit of that money and reinvest into the system, it might be a good idea. So more to come on that, but for the new fiscal year, we haven't really got a determination on if we'll be able to move forward with using any of those funds for Tillamook Transfer Station improvements. So that that number will remain unchanged for next fiscal year at $1,090,864.
Deb? Deborah? Where does the interest show for that? 'Cause this is zero on the interest, so.
Yeah, the interest actually is being allocated to Fund 410 for operations. So
Okay.
as soon as that hit the million mark, all the interest that money earns now goes to the operations side of solid waste.
How much is that coming in a year? Where does that come in at?
For interest overall is around 60,000.
Okay. Thank you.
So I did have a question on this one. Is there a chance that you would want to be able to access this money in the 26-27 year under the post-closure liability reserve fund? Why I say that is
Yeah.
it's in unappropriated ending fund balance. And that we can't touch except for very specific emergency situations.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know, now would be the opportunity to move some into contingency if you thought that was a possibility.
Good thought, Deborah. My gut reaction is to say yes. I'm not sure if that's a big logistical challenge for you, based on, we haven't submitted anything to DEQ, figuring out what we'd spend the money on, probably have to do call for bids and such. It might be where we're set up to access the money in the next fiscal year, but you
Okay.
never know if things really come through. So, yeah, if we can move some to contingency.
If that money is released, if DEQ says you only need 500,000 in the post-closure reserve, that money can just go to whatever you want to use it for. Is that correct? I don't think there's, my opinion,
Yeah.
my understanding, I guess I should say, is that money is not earmarked for anything. I hate to use the word earmarked, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So if you wanted then to, let's say DEQ didn't come up with the additional 300,000 or whatever that number is for the Civic City Transfer Station, that money could be used for that.
Good point.
Interesting idea. Yeah.
Could also throw a pizza party for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
Yeah, I could think of a lot of fun
Well,
things to
funny is
do.
I've been waiting for this moment because Dave and I have had conversations back and forth. He's been eyeballing this one for a long time.
I have, I think one of the things I was speaking earlier before the meeting began, I hate money that just sits there that we're not using. We could use money to our benefit. And I understand that we have to, by law, have that money sitting there. But if there's a way to free up that money, if we could invest $100,000 or $200,000 to completely solve the leachate problem, and maybe that's a stretch, maybe we'll never solve that problem. But if we could, or if we could go to DEQ and say, here's our expenses over the last 5 years, we really only need $500,000 in that fund. That other $500,000 should be working for us.
Right.
I would agree too, as long as it's being used towards solving these problems that we don't know what the end result's gonna be too. So I like the idea of having it available for you if you decide that we just need to stop the Ebola, like we're just throwing money at that Ebola.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's,
Well, not Ebola. E. coli, sorry.
it's in the news lately, yeah.
Want to start that?
No, appreciate all the thoughts on that. I totally agree. My initial gut reaction was if that money has been allocated to shore up the closed landfill, we should put that money into making sure the system's working and everything looks good there. I mean, there might be stipulations if DEQ does release that you can only spend on this, and this, and we'll have to look into it. But no, that's a great point with, the hazardous waste program we're just struggling to pay for, and Pacific City the bid came in a little high, and so it would support our overall efforts. But yeah, I do want to be mindful that we use the money
So the
in a
question,
responsible way.
to Deborah's point, because this is more of a procedural thing. You weren't planning on using it, so do you think you're fine not moving it now and then waiting to hear from DEQ? And then for next budget, think about doing it?
Not until 27, 28.
Yeah. So that's what you got, that's.
Yeah, I mean, my gut reaction is we probably won't access it in the first 6 months of the fiscal year, but I could see something coming about and maybe we do want to make some
There you go.
moves in the last 6 months. And if this really throws off because we didn't post this beforehand with that money, I don't want to make a big deal out of this either, a bigger hassle for you. So I'm flexible either way, but if it is a simple step forward and we could put $200,000-300,000 in contingency, just to have that flexibility, I think I'd be open to that. Or
Yeah.
Yes.
200,000 into contingency.
two,
Five.
let's do three.
Or three, about three. Because that's what we're short on the other bill. That's what we're short.
Exactly. And I just want to caution that even though that's money in contingency, we need to realize when we're starting to access that money, that money is actually there to access.
Well, also, we can move into contingency procedurally. The money's still there. If DEQ comes back and says you can't release it, like we still have it.
Yeah,
exactly. Is that what you're basically saying? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so but it gives you, it frees up the money. If DEQ says you got it, we have it.
Yeah. It seems like
Otherwise,
a,
you're right, we'll be locked into,
right.
locked in.
Yeah, it seems like a win-win. There's no real downside unless there's some logistical challenge. Yeah. Okay, $300,000 in contingency would be great.
I have another question, not maybe related to, well, definitely not related to the closed landfill, but if the RMA lawsuit goes through not in favor of the way the legislation's written, have we thought about what the financial impact would be to solid waste department? Are we going to owe on trucks that we've ordered? I know, I don't think solid waste has ordered trucks, but
No.
you know, some of the haulers are starting to order equipment. What happens if we have to return that money?
Right. Yeah, I know other jurisdictions have gotten new trucks. I mean, from our haulers, there's been no requests for trucks yet. I know some carts. They've been looking into getting some carts. We've had DEQ at most of our SWAC meetings. Gretchen Sandow is our contact, and you know, they haven't said stop, pull back. Obviously, they move forward. I know people have been. We've been receiving some money. Averill just finally got on board to start getting reimbursed for commingled and glass hauling, and so I'm working with him to get that all set up. It's been slow moving. It's been a lot of confusion, as we know, with SWAC, and the DEQ's chimed in. It's been with a lot of legislation that's being rolled out. It's challenging. So at this point, we're not heavily relying. I talked about the different revenue sources that weren't there in the past. And so I'm projecting us to be more nimble, to do more education and outreach. It was going to fund maybe the Heart of Cardam contract, but they have a grant now. So we're not so fully invested with the RMA law where we can't survive. I mean, we could be in a hard spot because we are taking number 5 plastics and the aseptic cartons now at the 3 transfer stations. And the RMA kind of facilitates who will take them and helps us find markets. And so it could be more of a challenge, and maybe we'd have to roll back some of the things we can take. You know, mixed paper was at a loss for a long time, and now we're at least getting it at a wash, and it's not costing us money to recycle mixed paper. So it's been helpful, but we're not so far into the program. We're not getting hundreds of thousands of dollars at the solid waste service district where it would be a big enough impact to really be detrimental to us in the next fiscal year. So I think we're okay for now, but yeah, we'll see where July we should have a ruling.
Thank you.
Well done. And thank you for, this is a simple thing, but very helpful for the highlights of things that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. That, you know, for folks who look at a lot of budgets to not have to search the page for the number that you're referring to.
Yeah, a lot of numbers on there, and I've done it with SWAC, and I feel like it's been effective to just highlight those. Sometimes I'll put little comments next to them, but and I know some people have presentations and pictures, and I like that stuff too, but I do like to keep it kind of simple. So I'm glad that worked out. Thank you.
Appreciate
the
it.
feedback.
This was great. That was both good. Thank you for your experience, questions after being on SWAC for so long and knowing the right questions to ask, and appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Ken.
Absolutely. Is there anyone online? Do we have any public comment, questions?
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Makes that really easy. Any additional comments? Need for deliberation?
I don't have any.
If so, I would entertain a motion to approve the budget and $1 per month for the solid waste service fee per developed property.
Second.
Oh, did he needs a
I'm
motion.
asking for the motion.
Oh,
Vote.
and I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I believe I have to vote because perfect on the corner. Okay, thank you very much. Adjourn the meeting at 3:49.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you both.
Thank you.
thank you,
Guys,
everybody.
good job.
Yeah, thank you.